The rescue and the secret cabin. Jackson's head throbbed as he drifted between pain and silence, his body half buried in the metal wreckage of his crashed shuttle. Cold winds brushed against his face. The air was breathable barely. His last memory was a distress call sent moments before the engine exploded. Now all he could feel was gravity pulling him down and his suit's power flickering out. But then, voices. 2 of them. Soft, melodic, not human. He couldn't see their faces clearly, but he heard the strange language they spoke. High-pitched syllables mixed with purring tones, something like song and speech together. Then a warm hand touched his chest and light flooded his vision. He passed out again. When he woke next, it wasn't inside his ship. He lay on a soft bed made of woven plant fibers, warm air surrounding him, gentle lights glowing from crystal-like structures in the ceiling. His eyes barely opened before he saw movement. 2 figures, female, graceful, alien. They were beautiful. Not just in the alien way he'd heard soldiers joke about on long deployments, but truly striking. One had deep violet skin with silver lines tracing across her arms like tattoos. The other had emerald green eyes that glowed even in the dim light, her silver white hair falling over her shoulders like water. Their features were sharp, elegant, and unlike any species he'd seen up close. They stood only a few feet away, speaking in their native tongue. "He's still unconscious," said the green-eyed one. "For now," the violet-skinned sister replied. "But he's different." Jackson kept his breathing slow and even. His training kicked in. Never reveal your strength too early. And right now, his greatest weapon was the fact that they didn't know he was awake. More importantly, they didn't know he understood their language. He had studied it during his time at the Frontier Embassy. The alien dialect belonged to the Lithari, an elusive race known for hiding their worlds and keeping to themselves. These two, if they were really Lithari, shouldn't even be on this moon. And yet, here they were. "He's warm," whispered the green-eyed sister, her hand brushing his arm. "Humans run hotter than we do." "That's not all," the other said quietly. "I read his energy when I healed him. He carries something ancient." Jackson's heart began to race. He forced himself to remain still. "What if they find out?" asked the younger one. "What if they track him here?" "They won't," her sister replied. "The signal was buried. The cabin is shielded. No one knows we're here." The younger one leaned closer to him, her face inches from his. "He's kind of pretty for a human," the other sister chuckled. "You always say that. You said that about the last one. This one feels different." Jackson could barely believe what he was hearing. They were talking about him as if he were some rare animal they'd rescued. Or worse, like he was part of some plan. And yet their voices weren't cruel. They were calm, curious, almost gentle. He felt a blanket being tucked around him and a warm hand rested over his pulse. "His heart is strong," said the elder, "but he might not be ready for what we are." "We can't keep him here forever," said the younger. "When he wakes, what will we tell him?" "We'll tell him the truth," the elder whispered. "Or enough of it." Then their tone changed. "We need to leave this moon. But not yet. If we move too soon, they'll detect us." "What about the child?" the younger asked. "What if she—" "Shh, not here. Not now." The room fell silent for a few moments. Jackson could hear the faint humming of alien tech running under the floor. Then the door hissed open, and one of them stepped outside, leaving only the green-eyed sister behind. She looked down at him and, very softly, brushed a strand of hair away from his forehead. Her touch lingered longer than it should have. "I dreamed of someone like you once," she whispered. Jackson nearly opened his eyes, but instead he stayed still, because something in her voice wasn't just curiosity. It was sadness, regret, hope. She stood, turned, and left the room. As soon as the door closed behind her, Jackson exhaled slowly. Whatever he had stumbled into, it was bigger than a crash landing, and he wasn't just a guest. Here. He was a secret, one he didn't yet understand, but he was going to find out, even if he had to fake. Sleep a little longer. The hidden past of the sisters Jackson. Didn't sleep that night, not really. He shifted slightly, just enough to keep the illusion going. His body stayed still beneath the soft alien blanket, but his mind raced through every word, every tone, every whisper he had overheard. There was something about the way they moved around him, protective, careful, yet nervous, that kept him alert. It was more than simple kindness. These sisters were hiding something, and he was at the center of it. The green-eyed sister's soft voice echoed in his mind. I dreamed of someone like you once. What did that even mean? A prophecy? A coincidence? Or something more? In the silence of the early morning light, soft and blue like the skies of a dream, Jackson slowly opened his eyes, pretending to wake up groggily. The moment he stirred, the door hissed open and the younger sister appeared with a bowl of what looked like steaming fruit soup. Her expression changed instantly. She stepped forward with wide eyes and her silver hair shimmered as she rushed to his side. You're awake, she said in English this time, her voice cautious but warm. You've been unconscious for 3 full cycles. Jackson blinked as if confused, playing his part. Where am I? He whispered. The sister gently helped him sit up and handed him the bowl. Safe, she replied. That's all that matters for now. Jackson looked around, pretending to take in the room for the first time. The walls pulsed with soft energy, and strange glowing vines climbed through crystal structures embedded in the ceiling. We found you in the wreckage, she said, sitting beside him. We were nearby when the explosion happened. Jackson nodded slowly, watching her carefully. Thank you. I owe you my life. The sister looked down almost shyly. We couldn't leave you. Not when we saw what was inside you. Jackson tensed at those words, but hid it behind a fake cough. Inside me? He asked with a weak smile. She hesitated. I mean, you were badly hurt. I helped heal your wounds. I used a little ancient medicine. At that moment, the elder sister entered the room. Her presence was different, still calm, still elegant, but more guarded. Her violet skin seemed to glow faintly with the light behind her. So, she said, stepping forward, the human finally wakes. Jackson turned to her. You saved me. Both of you. I don't know why, but I'm grateful. She studied him in silence for a moment. You don't remember the crash? He shook his head slowly, keeping the act going. Only flames. Then darkness. The sisters exchanged a look, a private one filled with hidden meanings. Jackson caught it. He didn't understand everything yet, but he knew that look. It meant they were deciding how much to tell him. Later that day, Jackson was allowed to walk around the shelter. It wasn't large, but it was high-tech in a strange, organic way. The doors opened with a whisper. The lights responded to motion. The ceiling above them showed a digital projection of the alien sky. 3 soft moons drifting across an endless purple canvas. The green-eyed sister, who introduced herself as Elira, gave him a slow tour. This moon is forgotten by most, she said. It was once part of a trading route. Now it's abandoned. Jackson played along. Lucky for me you were here. She gave a small smile. Or unlucky, depending on what happens next. They passed through a chamber filled with holographic scrolls and relics. Strange symbols floated in midair, some glowing, some pulsing. Elira touched one, and it showed a 3D image of a star system Jackson didn't recognize. What is this place really? He asked, keeping his tone soft. She stared at the image and didn't answer right away. It used to be a temple, she finally said. Then a prison. Now it's a hiding place. Jackson's brow furrowed. Hiding from what? Her lips tightened. Everyone. That night Jackson couldn't stop thinking about but deep inside a part of him was burning with questions and fear. Not of the sisters, but of what he might really be. Of what was waking up inside him. A message they didn't know. He heard that night was the longest night of Jackson's life inside that silent, ancient cabin. The air was warm, but his skin felt cold from the weight of every word he had secretly heard. He stayed still, but his thoughts were racing like fire. He knew now that these 2 sisters were not just rescuers, not just lost travelers, not simple aliens he just got lucky to meet. They had a plan connected to him before they even found him. There was something about him that activated their technology, their symbols, their relics, and this meant his crash was not random fate anymore. Someone, might have pushed him here. He needed to know more, so he kept pretending to sleep a little longer, because the truth always flowed most clearly when the other side believed you were unaware. As the night passed deeper, the sisters returned once again to the room. Their steps were slow and cautious this time, as if they were checking if he had truly recovered or not. Elira moved closer to him, touching a small device on her wrist. She whispered something in her native tongue and the device activated a small floating orb above them, A hologram appeared with static flickering around it. Jackson stayed absolutely still. The elder sister spoke first in their language. "The signal is weak, but we must send the update." Elira nodded, and then spoke into the orb. "We have secured the human. We have hidden him. He is alive." And then, the orb responded with a distorted voice that made Jackson's heart nearly stop. The voice was darker, deeper, older than theirs. "Good, bring him alive. Before they reach you, remember the law: if you fail, we take the child." Jackson felt his chest tighten. "Child? Who?" His body wanted to react, wanted to open his eyes and demand answers, but he forced his muscles still like stone. The message continued. The child must be protected at all cost. The human is the key. The hologram flickered off. For a moment there was complete silence in the room. Then Elira spoke, but her voice was shaking now. "We don't have much time." Sena placed her hand gently on her sister's shoulder. "We knew this path would catch us someday." Elira turned toward Jackson. "But he doesn't deserve to be in this. He doesn't even know us. How can we expect him to trust us after what has happened before?" Sena didn't answer immediately. Instead, she walked closer to Jackson and looked at his sleeping face with serious, calculating eyes. "Trust is not the priority," she whispered. "Survival is." Elira shook her head. "He is different. You saw it too. I sensed something in him. He could choose to help us, not because we force him, but because he decides to." Sena scoffed lightly. "You are letting your feelings interfere again." Elira looked away, hurt filling her voice. "Feelings are not weakness, Sena. They are the reason we still have hope." When the sisters finally left the room, Jackson slowly opened one eye. He stared at the ceiling, mind spinning into deeper realization. They were being hunted. Someone wanted him alive for reasons they were hiding. There was a child somewhere involved, and the prophecy they whispered was no longer a fantasy or religious myth. It was active, real, and dangerous. Jackson sat up slowly once he was alone again, rubbing his forehead and taking a deep breath. If he confronted them now, he would lose the advantage he had. So he decided he needed to play the game smart. He needed to keep watching, keep learning, keep listening until he understood the full picture. Because the biggest question in his mind now was not who are these sisters, but why do they think I am the key? The next morning, Jackson pretended he had finally regained more strength and walked out into the main chamber, acting confused and innocent. The sisters were waiting. They looked tense, startled to see him awake and walking. Sena asked, "How are you feeling today?" Jackson smiled casually and acted normal. Better, still confused. Still trying to understand what happened. Elira stepped closer and her eyes softened a little. "You are safe here. That is what matters most." Jackson nodded with false ease, even though inside his blood pulsed with suspicion and silent preparation. Because now he knew, this rescue was not charity. This rescue was not accident. This rescue was the beginning of something much bigger, and he still did not know if he should fear these two sisters or protect them. But he promised himself one thing before this was over. He would find out exactly what their real intentions were, and why the galaxy wanted him alive so badly. When he finally opened his eyes, the day passed slowly, but the weight pressing on Jackson's chest grew heavier with every quiet moment. His body was healed, but his heart was restless. Every time Elira passed near him, he could feel her eyes searching his face, as if looking for a sign that he remembered something more than he let on. Sena, on the other hand, remained distant, measured, always watching but never revealing what was behind her sharp violet gaze. Jackson spent most of the day in the central chamber of the shelter, studying the strange relics and symbols scattered throughout the room, pretending curiosity, pretending ignorance, but all the while waiting for the right moment. And when it finally came, it did not arrive with tension, but with quiet, with trust, and a single moment of accidental truth. He had been staring at a hovering symbol etched into a floating crystal slab when Elira walked in. The crystal lit up brighter as he touched it, and Elira gasped softly behind him. He turned slowly, pretending surprise, and smiled. "Did I break it?" She shook her head, eyes wide. "No, you activated it." Jackson raised his eyebrows and said with a chuckle, "Lucky guess." Elira hesitated for a second, then stepped closer. "That glyph hasn't responded to anyone since the temple fell. It reacts to genetic resonance. It's not luck." Jackson tilted his head, keeping his tone light. So I'm special? Illyra's face softened, and for the first time her guard slipped. You might be, she whispered. More than you realize. Before Jackson could speak again, Sana entered the chamber. Her steps were sharp, her presence commanding. What are you doing? She asked sternly. Illyra stepped back slightly. He activated the glyph. Sana's eyes moved from the crystal to Jackson, then back again. Leave us, she said to her sister. I need to speak to him alone. Illyra paused, then walked out reluctantly, glancing over her shoulder with worry. Jackson turned fully to face Sana, feeling the moment he had waited for was finally here. I know you've been listening, she said bluntly, eyes narrowing. Jackson didn't flinch. He didn't play dumb, instead he exhaled slowly and finally dropped the act. Yes, he said quietly. I've been awake. For days. Sana didn't move, but her jaw tightened. Then you've heard things you weren't supposed to. Jackson nodded. I heard about the message. About the child. About me being the key. His voice remained calm. I heard you say I shouldn't know. That I'm not ready. For the first time, Sana looked unsure. Her cold expression cracked slightly as silence filled the room. Then she looked away and walked slowly toward the central console, placing her hand on it. Lights flowed across the surface, forming a map of distant stars. You were never supposed to be involved, she said. You were never supposed to be part of this war, this prophecy, this madness. Jackson stepped closer, his voice firm now. But I am involved. You pulled me into this, so now I deserve to know everything. Sana turned to face him. What you heard is only part of the truth. The full story, it will change everything you think you know. Jackson folded his arms. Try me. So she began. Many cycles ago, she said slowly, our people guarded the Axis relics, ancient machines built by a race even older than ours. They were made to stabilize star systems, repair broken timelines, and protect life from complete destruction. But others wanted to use them as weapons. The war that followed destroyed our homeworld. The relics were scattered, and only a few bloodlines were chosen as keys to activate them again. She paused. And humans were never meant to have that blood. Until now, Jackson's heart pounded. You're saying I have, what, alien DNA? Not just alien, Sana said. Chosen, ancient, lost, we've tested hundreds of humans before, none had it. Until you carry a strand that shouldn't exist anymore. And in that moment, as Jackson looked once more into her eyes, he no longer saw just a secret keeper or a strange alien protector. He saw someone afraid, someone tired, someone who had been carrying this burden alone for far too long. And now, she was no longer alone. Attack on the shelter. The final hours before departure felt unnaturally calm, as if the moon itself was holding its breath. Jackson could sense it in the air. The soft hum of the relic chamber, the strange quiet in the corridors, the way Illyra's eyes lingered a little longer on the stars projected across the ceiling. Sana moved with sharpened focus, checking systems, scanning the atmosphere, reviewing old codes buried deep within the walls. The plan was clear. At dawn, they would leave this hidden shelter and reach the outpost where the child was kept. But beneath every step and every word was the same tension, like a storm cloud swelling above without thunder. Jackson could feel it building inside himself, too. Ever since he touched the relic and saw it glow brighter with each breath, something had awakened inside him. It wasn't power, at least not in a way he understood. It was a pull, like ancient threads remembering his name. As Jackson walked through the hallway for the last check of their supplies, Illyra joined him, holding a small scanner in one hand and a shimmering silver blade in the other. She offered it to him. Just in case, she said softly. I hope you don't need it, but this moon, it listens to fear. Jackson smiled faintly and took it. I've learned to listen back. Their hands brushed for a second longer than necessary, but neither pulled away quickly. There was something growing between them now. A silent alliance built not just on survival, but on belief. Belief that maybe this wasn't random. Maybe they were meant to cross paths. Maybe whatever was about to happen was already written. Then, without warning, everything shattered. The ceiling cracked with a thunderous boom as fire tore through the upper shell of the cabin. Jackson barely had time to grab Illyra and pull her behind a wall before the blast knocked down part of the corridor. Smoke poured in thick and blinding. Lights blinked out. Sirens shrieked across the system. We're under attack. Sana's voice rang through the emergency comms. Jackson rose fast, gripping the alien blade tightly, eyes burning as he pushed through the dust and flame. In the chaos, Illyra led him down a side passage. "There's a tunnel exit through the eastern wing. We can escape underground." But as they turned the corner, two figures in black armor stepped out from the shadows, their weapons humming with dark plasma energy. Without thinking, Jackson launched forward, sliding across the floor and striking low with the blade. The weapon, though light, tore through the attacker's leg with shocking ease. The creature screamed in a voice that wasn't entirely mortal. Illyra fired her weapon, striking the second intruder in the chest before he could return fire. They moved together, fast, precise, like they had trained for this moment their entire lives. Sena met them halfway through the collapsing hallway, her face fierce, her robe burned on one side. "They found us faster than we expected," she growled. "They tracked the relic's signal. We have minutes, maybe less." She handed Jackson a small device, a portable transporter node. "If we're separated, activate this. It'll find the child." Jackson didn't ask how. He just took it, pocketed it, and nodded. "Let's get out of here." But as they ran toward the exit, more enemies arrived, cloaked figures who seemed to shimmer in and out of view, like shadows made solid. Jackson fought with everything he had. His training returned like fire through his blood. Strike, duck, aim, move. He had fought in border wars, in pirate raids, in orbital ambushes, but this was different. These attackers weren't just skilled. They weren't trying to kill him. They were trying to capture him. And every time one of them reached too close, they whispered a single word in their strange dialect. "Key," Sena shouted over the blasts. "They want you alive! Don't let them get close." Jackson spun and fired, knocking one back into a pillar of flame. Another lunged, and Illyra screamed as she stepped in front of Jackson, taking a hit across her side. He caught her before she fell. Blood shimmered like stardust across her skin. She smiled weakly. "Still alive," she whispered. "Just a scratch." Jackson's throat tightened. He held her tighter, shielding her as Sena covered their retreat with bursts of high-voltage energy. They made it to the emergency shaft at the far edge of the shelter. Sena triggered the override, and a circular platform began to lower them beneath the surface. The sky above was filled with falling debris, black ships circling like vultures. As they descended into the old tunnels, Jackson looked up one last time, memorizing the way the stars looked above this cursed moon. Then the platform sealed above them and silence returned. They were alive. Barely. Illyra lay against him, breathing hard but steady. Sena stood opposite, wounded but standing tall, her eyes still fierce with fury and fire. Jackson felt the device in his pocket pulse once. The child was still alive. Still waiting. And he knew now, more than ever, this was no longer about escape. This was war. The bond they tried to hide. The tunnels beneath the moon's surface were older than any of them imagined. Carved into the stone long before the sisters were born, long before Jackson ever wore a uniform. They pulsed faintly with ancient energy, as if remembering footsteps not taken for centuries. Every wall was etched with glowing veins, and some of the symbols flickered when Jackson passed. The silence down there wasn't dead. It was breathing, watching, waiting. And as the three of them moved through the narrow paths, Jackson supporting Illyra, Sena scouting ahead, the air carried a strange warmth, like the past whispering through the dust. Illyra leaned against Jackson as they walked, her wound wrapped tightly with sterile fabric, pulled from the last of their medkits. The plasma burn had cut deep, but her strength surprised him. She didn't complain. She didn't cry. She kept walking, her steps slow but stubborn, and Jackson stayed by her side without question. He had seen bravery before, in soldiers and civilians and people who refused to fall when everything burned. But this was something more. It wasn't just courage. It was commitment. She had protected him when she didn't have to. She had taken the hit meant for him. And now every time her fingers brushed his, something inside him stirred in ways he wasn't ready to name. They reached a rest chamber deep within the tunnels, hidden behind a pressure-locked stone door that Sena had opened using a pattern carved into her palm. Inside, the room was round and warm, lit by slow-turning crystals hovering in the air. It felt like a place for reflection, for truth. As Sena secured the perimeter with silent motion sensors and old wards carved into the floor, Jackson helped Illyra lie down beside a curved wall, lined with soft, moss-like fabric. Her face was pale, her skin cool, He knelt beside her, watching her closely, and when her eyes opened again, they were not filled with pain, but with something far more fragile. "You should have left me," she whispered with a tired smile. "Carried Sina, she's stronger." Jackson shook his head gently, brushing a strand of silver hair from her cheek. "Strength isn't just in the muscles, Alira," he said quietly. "Sometimes it's in choosing to stay, and I'm not leaving you." She looked away for a moment, blinking. "You're too kind for someone in the middle of a war." "I wasn't always kind," he admitted. "But you've given me something I didn't think I'd feel again." She turned back to him. "What's that?" He paused, then whispered, "Purpose." Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. For the first time, there were no secrets between them. No acting, no pretending. The tension that had been growing between them since that first night, since the moment he had faked sleep and heard her whisper over his still body, was no longer something either of them could ignore. In the quiet, Jackson reached out and took her hand. She didn't pull away. She simply squeezed it gently, and in that small moment a silent promise was made between them. Without force, without logic, without fear. They would see this through together, no matter what came next. Sena watched them from across the room. She didn't interrupt. She didn't scold. She only stood in the shadows, her expression unreadable, her hands folded behind her back. And when she finally spoke, her voice was calm but clear. "We leave at first light. The child is being moved to the temple ruins. If we wait too long, she will be lost forever." Jackson stood, still holding Alira's hand. "Then we don't wait." The rest of the night passed in uneasy silence. The crystals in the chamber dimmed, casting slow-turning shadows across the walls. Jackson stayed close to Alira, never fully sleeping, his ears tuned to every vibration in the stone, every tremor in the air, and in that stillness the relic pulsed again. The device in his pocket, cold all day, woke up glowing with faint light. He held it gently and watched as the small screen flickered, revealing a set of coordinates and one word: ready. When they emerged from the tunnels at dawn, the world had changed. The stars above were no longer just points of light. They were battlegrounds waiting to erupt. The wind that rushed across the old temple plains carried the scent of metal and war. Far on the horizon, black ships hovered in silence. And there, hidden behind ruined spires of stone and broken statues of forgotten gods, was the temple. Jackson felt something ancient awaken in his blood. His steps grew stronger, his grip on the blade tighter. Alira walked beside him, her wound wrapped, her face set with quiet fire. Sena led them forward, saying nothing, but the way she looked back at Jackson had changed. There was no more doubt in her eyes, no more cold suspicion, only recognition. She knew now what Jackson was: not just a human, not just a soldier, but the spark that would change everything, and he was ready to face whatever truth waited inside the temple, even if it shattered the galaxy. The truth that left him speechless. The ancient temple rose before them like the bones of a forgotten titan, its broken towers piercing the sky, its weathered gates humming with quiet energy that no one fully understood. The winds howled low across the crumbled stones, carrying with them whispers not made by mouths. Jackson stepped forward slowly, each stride drawing him closer to something that both pulled at him like gravity and pushed against him like pressure. He could feel it in his chest, in his blood, something older than war, older than language. Sena and Alira walked behind him in silence, their weapons drawn, their hearts thundering beneath unreadable faces. The relic pulsed in his pocket with each step, lighting his path with symbols only he could see. They passed through the first gate without resistance. The guards were gone. Only broken armor and scorched stone told the story of a battle already lost. Inside, golden light filtered down from cracks in the ceiling. The air shimmered faintly. Alira reached out to touch a column etched with spiraling glyphs, and they lit beneath her fingers like fire tracing old memories. "This is where they used to bless the chosen," she whispered. "Where our ancestors waited for the stars to speak." Jackson said nothing. He could hear a sound growing louder in his ears. Not footsteps, not machines, but a low vibration, like his heartbeat syncing with something underground. The temple was alive, and it knew he was here. As they moved deeper into the inner sanctum, they finally saw her, the child. She stood in the center of the room, surrounded by light, her small frame wrapped in robes far too large for her. Her skin shimmered with a quiet glow, her silver eyes wide, ancient, too calm for someone so young. She looked at Jackson without fear, as if she'd been waiting for him her entire life. Jackson froze. His breath caught. She wasn't just a child. She was a mirror. Something in her face, her features, something human, something Lethari. A fusion of both. She's the last seed, Illyra said quietly beside him. The final daughter of the Star bloodline. Hidden for years, we were her protectors. Until the prophecy found you. The chamber around them began to change. The walls shifted, reshaping into pillars of light. A giant holographic map unfurled above them, showing 100 systems, 1,000 stars, and in the center, a glowing symbol. The same one that pulsed when Jackson first touched the relic. The child walked toward him slowly, and when she reached him, she raised her hand and placed it on his chest. The core accepts you, she said in a voice not entirely her own. You carry the forgotten code. You are the echo, the one who left, and now returns. Jackson's legs weakened. He dropped to one knee as a wave of heat flooded his veins. Visions flashed before his eyes, worlds being built, civilizations rising and falling, the relics locking time itself. And then, a face, a woman, neither human nor alien, cradling a newborn, his name being whispered into the stars. Illyra caught him as he stumbled. Jackson! Her voice cut through the storm. He gripped her arm, breathing hard. I saw everything. I saw what they hid, what they erased. Sena approached with narrowed eyes. Then tell us, what did they hide? Jackson stood again slowly, the weight of the truth almost too much to carry. The Lethari didn't just guard the relics. They created them, but they weren't the only ones. Humans were part of it too. We were there in the beginning. We helped shape the first systems, but something happened. A war broke time. Our bloodlines were scattered. The galaxy was rewritten to forget us. He turned to face them both. I'm not the key. I'm the memory they buried. Suddenly, a sharp sound tore through the chamber, an alarm from the outer wall. Sena spun around. They found us. The black-cloaked soldiers stormed the gate, their weapons glowing with corrupted light, their commander stepping forward, a tall creature with silver armor and a face hidden by a cracked mask. He raised a weapon toward the child. Give her to me, his voice roared, or everything dies. Jackson stepped in front of her, his hands empty, his body tired, but something ancient burned in his eyes now. You've made a mistake, he said, and what are you? The commander hissed. A soldier? A survivor? Jackson took a deep breath, his voice calm. I'm the first echo. The last warning. The ground cracked. The relic in his pocket erupted in golden fire, lifting into the air, spinning, glowing brighter than the stars. The temple responded. Light surged across the floor, connecting every pillar, every wall. The enemy froze, weapons short-circuiting in their hands. The commander screamed as the energy pulsed outward, blasting him back into the stone with a flash that shook the moon. When the light dimmed, all was still. The child stood behind Jackson. Holding his hand, the sisters approached slowly, the battle over before it began. You awakened it, Illyra said, breathless. You became the signal. Jackson turned to her, then to Sena, and finally down to the girl. No, he said. We did. They left the temple in silence, the child cradled in Illyra's arms. The relic floated behind them, no longer a secret, but a guide. Above, the stars seemed closer now, brighter, as if watching, and in Jackson's heart there was peace. Not because the danger was over, but because, for the first time in a long time, he knew where he belonged, not as a weapon,